Here we go. Just tell me when to scroll down.
Okay, this is my Heritage Fair project on my grandparents' house, Stoneleigh. I want to recognize that Stoneleigh is located on the traditional lands of the Wasanic people. I am presenting from the Aquang territory. Now let's begin. Stoneleigh was built by Jesse and George Bernard. Jesse and George were married in 1902. Stoneleigh was built back in 1906. The Bernards lived in Stoneleigh for 8 years, then they moved up to Parksville in 1914. Stoneleigh was built in a small clearing on 160 acres. You can scroll down now. Why was Stoneleigh built? Jesse and George Bernard moved from Alberta to the Highlands, BC. They moved to be closer to Jesse's sisters, Sybil and Jesse's parents. They lived in Jesse's parents' house while George preempted a quarter section. George made Stoneleigh as a farmhouse. They raised geese, turkeys, chickens, sheep, cows, and goats. What changes were made from then and now? When the Bernards weren't living there, people would come to the low beach beside the lake. If they needed wood, people would take it off the old barns and house. There was a number of people that had the property before my grandparents, like Ed Chan, the Lawsons, Ian Bryan Finley, Jack Guth, and finally my grandparents bought. I had I had an interview with my grandpa because it's their house. Fun facts. To preempt means to buy unused land to use as your own. My grandparents kept the name Stoneleigh even though the original homestead was next door. The quarter section is 106 acres, just said in a different way. My grandparents kept bees called Stoneleigh apiary. You can go down. And yeah, these are my references and the pictures. That's the end of my presentation.
Okay, great. We will just get on to questions here. I'm just going to open up my document where I wrote down all the questions I was going to ask you here. So, my first question for you is why did you decide to choose Stoneleigh for your project?
Well, I've always been there, and we go there all the time. And I knew the house was old and that some changes were made, but I wasn't sure exactly, so I decided to do this project, and my grandpa helped a lot. He's really into those family history and history stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. How has researching Stoneleigh affected you? Like, has it brought you closer to your family through this research process?
It has. Now I know kind of like the history of my grandparents' house. It was also my mom's house and my aunt and uncle. Um, yeah, yeah.
That's great. What were your main sources of information when you were researching?
Well, I got a lot of my information from my grandpa.
Mm-hmm.
Also, he provided me a link to the Colonists newspaper. That was the old newspaper that they would use. There was also a few articles or newsletters that I found um, that were written by like another historian in the Highlands, Nancy McMahon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was your grandpa really excited when you told him that you were going to do a project on Stoneleigh?
Yes, he wanted to help in every way.
Oh, that's so great. Um, What was one challenge that you encountered while researching your topic, or maybe something that surprised you while you were researching?
Something that surprised me was that so many people had lived in Stoneleigh before my grandparents bought. Uh, I thought it was just like the Bernards and then my grandparents, but there was a big time slot in between. Um, Also, learning about the Bernards and how they built it and when and the timelines.
Yeah. How were you able to figure out who had lived in the house before your grandparents?
Well, my grandpa told me just who it was and what I could um research. I found a few articles on them, and my grandpa gave me some more. Uh, Also, there was a book on the Highlands, and I found some articles in that. There also, yeah.
Okay. What do you think would have been one of the biggest challenges for the settlers?
Um, Probably visiting somewhere or like going into town because they would live so far out and the roads were quite twisty and long. Plus, they had like big properties. So they had to get out of that property onto the road, and it'll be like if you go in the morning, you get back in the evening, and it was like it took that long just to get to town and back. When
Right.
now is like 15 minutes both ways.
Yeah, that's a very big difference. Um, what was the most valuable resource for your project and why? And your grandfather is a valid answer to that question.
Um, Probably the two newsletters I found.
Mhm.
Yeah, they had lots of information about the Bernards, and they had a bit of the diary of Jesse.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
yeah, my grandpa found the rest of the diary, and he's reading that. Um, but yeah, that was probably the most where I got most of my information from.
Great. Um, is there something at Stoneleigh that you connect with? Because you said you go there often. What's your favorite part about Stoneleigh?
Um, Probably the lake. They live on Fork Lake in the Highlands. Um, every summer we spend a lot of time out there swimming. My grandpa also does woodwork, so he made rafts and floaties to go out on. It's
That's great.
yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun. What do you think it would have been like to settle in the Highlands?
Um, Probably a lot harder than it would be now.
Yeah,
Uh, because they'll have to build it all. They'll have to raise all their own crops and animals.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That,
And we are coming up to the end of the interview here. So, is there anything else that you would like me to ask you, or is there anything else that you wanted to go over that we didn't already talk about?
no, I think that's good.
Awesome. You did a great job. I really liked looking into your project. So, good job. And that is this interview done, and I'm doing the next interview, so I'll just keep talking here.